And Jennie Taylor is our presenter. She's been with her 4 years and has 7 kids. So hopefully she'll have a lot to teach us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for being here and remind me what time we're going till
20.
20.
Yeah,
20.
I'll go like this when it's 5 minutes. So.
12:20. Sean will keep me. And if not, then he's just gonna start kicking chairs if I go too long. Like you walked in, I'm like, whoa, let's not kick all the chairs while we walk in, but welcome to my class. Okay. Thanks for coming in this classroom. You're kind of way over there. So if you want to roll on your little ball chair toward the middle, that's fine. If not, I'll just do a lot of this and go back and forth, which when Kate Packer would not approve of, he would tell us to turn the classroom that way, but he's not here. So I want to start. This will work. Hold on, it was working a minute ago. It's probably just this thing. There we go. Whoa, 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 whoa. Back up, back up, back up. Okay, here's where we want to be. So this class is really great. Thank you. You are so much more obedient than the teenagers I sometimes teach. I will say that to high school kids and they like look at me like, that's cool. So I'm just like, oh, get busy. It's not my fault. Okay, this is going to be a lot of discussion. I appreciate that Lisa said I'm going to teach you some things, and that would be great if I'm able to. But I think we all know at this stage in our crazy lives, we're all just hoping to teach each other and learn. And maybe you've had some success with something that I could try, and maybe something you did would totally backfire at my house, and that's okay too. So we're going to jump into just real interactive. Come in. And you have like 5 different choices of chairs you can sit in. But before I introduce myself a little bit more, I'd like to know a little about you. Who are you? And then the second question, of course, is why are you here? And you could probably answer that several ways. There's no wrong answer. So anybody willing to be the guinea pig and start? If not, I know like 3 of your names, in which case I'll start with you. So, okay, thanks, Lisa.
I'm Lisa, and I have 2 kids at home. And my husband, they were in diapers when my husband passed away. They're now 11 and 12. One has disabilities, always high functioning. And I don't know how to take any time for myself. My husband had health issues and then cancer. So I've been caretaker and preemie babies, caretaker mom.
Which is caretaking.
Yeah. And we're doing really well. I have really amazing kids. A lot of hard work, but I want to know how to balance it, how to juggle it, just like the title says.
How many of you are like, hey, me too? Yeah, we'll get to that. I can't promise all the answers, but I'm positive we will come away with some good ideas and hopefully some good tools, because my husband didn't battle physical illness, but I've had, children and just a different juggle things. So I think we'll find some common ground. Who else? Who are you while you're here? In the back. On the cozy couch.
I know.
Isn't that nice? Like, this is so absolutely not conducive to real academic learning taking place. If I were the teacher, this would drive me nuts, but I hope you're cozy. It's all about the students. Yeah.
I was married for 32 years before my husband passed away 18 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
He had a hereditary blood disease, and he eventually died of kidney failure. So he had the disease his whole life.
Right.
And when we got married, he had just gotten out of the infirmary from the Navy because he was sick and they didn't know what it was.
Oh my goodness.
And I have 4 beautiful daughters, and they are the carriers, plus they have it.
Oh.
And 8 out of my 12 grandkids have it. And I've got a great granddaughter.
Wow. So it's a challenge that continues even after his passing. That's a lot. Thank you for sharing that. Who else? Sean in the back.
So my wife and I are married 22 years. I have 4 kids. 2 of my oldest sons just got married last year. So, and then I have so when my wife passed away, I had 1 son on a mission at the time, and then 2 sons in high school and 1 daughter in elementary school. And now the 2 sons are married, and the oldest, the youngest boy is 20, still living at home. And my daughter, 16, just a junior in dance company. So just trying to figure out how to be a dad for a daughter.
Yeah.
And then,
that's
we're waking up early in the various stuff.
If anybody, you're the dance dad, like that's pretty awesome, because it's hard to be a dance mom, let alone the dance dad. We'll go here and then up here. Did I see a hand?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we were married for
Sorry, what's your name?
My name's Bryn.
Bryn, hi Bryn.
We're married 17 years with 5 kids, and they are really close together. So we have 4 teenagers and 1 preteen.
It
And,
just makes me really tired. I'm sorry to hear that. Like, that's a lot.
and he travels a lot for work. He without playing puzzles and stuff. So
Okay.
well, he designs some for the church and then the travel. So he's gone like 1 week or 2 weeks out every month for years. So it's one of those things where, like, when you got camp and got sick, like, I got to take care of him, but it's like, you know what? I can do this. I'm good. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, like, till after he passed, like, how much he did, even though he wasn't there.
And
And
even,
so it's one of those things where you're like, and now I'm like, how much of this work? And yeah, so you just don't realize the holes
until everything's dripping through them.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Over here.
I'm Lisa. Why am I here? Because I have to figure it. I'm trying to figure out the balance work life with the family. I lost my husband almost 6.5 years ago. My kids were 8 and 12 at the time. And I somehow managed to figure out life in Washington. Then I moved down here, got remarried. And now I'm trying to figure out how to balance the family. My oldest turned 18. I lost half that social security check
Right.
and I had to go back to work full time. So how do I balance the kids, the family and work?
Yeah, right? How many say, yes? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Chris Gold. My husband had dementia and I was his caregiver for several years. At his funeral, someone said to me, now you need to figure out who Chris is. And then 2 months later, my daughter was seriously ill and I went to North Dakota and took care of her for the last 2 months of her life. So I lost my husband and my daughter like 4 months apart. And I'm still
long
taking
ago?
care of everybody,
Can I
4.5
say-
years. And I'm still taking care of everybody. And it's like, there's a song called Who Mother's Mama, I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the universal question. We haven't yet answered it because
right.
it's, I mean, it isn't younger or old. Okay, I'm hoping as we keep going, I want more of these stories, the connection. The interesting thing is, and it's kind of the awful thing, like we're all kind of here for the same reason. We're here because somebody we love isn't here anymore. And that's really an unusual dynamic if you were in a group full of lots and lots of people at maybe another conference for work or a conference for some other organization you're a part of. That shared loss hopefully gives us that safe space for us to say, hey, I'm drowning. I'm underwater. I can't do this. I don't even think I want to do this anymore. And we're going to learn a couple of tips and tools. Well, I'm going to share a couple that I'm learning, but I really want to hear what you're learning as well, because the more kids you have, the less you know. Raise your hand if you agree. Like nobody knows more about parenthood than the woman that's never given birth or adopted a child, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that baby shower, I was so smart. I was gonna know exactly what to do with that child and follow all the books, and then you actually have a child. I'm like, ah. So I'm gonna just introduce myself really quickly. My name's Jennie. I'm here because 20 years ago, I met and fell in love with a man who went away to war several times and didn't make it back alive. So your story looks a lot like my story, even though the details of each of our story might be different. And the truth of the matter is, I really feel like we're here, not just at this institute building and conference, but we're here on earth because we really just want to live happily ever after. And I don't think that's a childish ambition. And I actually think it's a very gospelly sound desire. We were sent here to live happily ever after. And I think the goal is to learn how to live happily even after. And how to live happily even through, and how to love ourselves and take care of ourselves while we're trying to take care of someone else, and how to help a child grieve when you're still grieving and when you can't make sense of anything. So we're going to go through just a few things and emotions and experiences that really, unfortunately, I know you get. Like, I wish I had to explain to you what loss was like. I wish I had to tell you and try to find words to describe what it feels like to lose that person. I did say once to someone, people say you've lost your better half. I said, but it wasn't the left half or the right half or the top half or the bottom half. I lost half of every cell in my body. I lost half of everything that I had become. We've been married 15 years, which is, a decent amount of time. Breaks my heart when I find a widow that was married a year or two and lost their spouse. And it breaks my heart for the widow that was married 60 or 70 years and lost their spouse. Like, there's no good time to bury that person. I wish we could all just quietly hold our hands in our 90s and just slip through the veil, but very rarely is that the case. You ever felt like this? Like, this is me in the plan of salvation. And I'm like, yay, let's go to earth. And I'll tell you, and I might say things you disagree with, in which case, believe what you believe. Do not let me change your mind if you don't want to. But some people will say, oh, we knew what we were signing up for, and we knew this would happen, and we agreed to this. I will say, yeah, like I knew what giving birth was like before I showed up at the hospital. I read the books. I went to the baby showers. I talked to the other ladies that had had a baby. I knew what childbirth would be like, and I knew what raising a child would be like, but I didn't really, right? So I really do believe that we agreed to come to this life and be tested and tried, and we said yes to all the good and yes to all the bad, but I think we kind of didn't have a clue. And I think there's scriptures to back that up. One really significant one comes from the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus himself said, whoa, there another way, because I'm feeling like this a little much. And yet he accepted the Father's will. So if you've ever gotten to the point where you're like, it's a little much, just remember Jesus felt the same way. When he said, Abba, which would be like, Daddy, just stop it. Stop, make the pain stop. Yeah.
I love this quote by Jeffrey Holland that with Jesus Christ in Gethsemane, and he says, how could we ever think or believe that it would be easy for us when it was never, ever easy for him?
Thank you. That is beautiful.
I love that.
And there's a sweet woman in my ward who's divorced, and her story sometimes feels even more awful than my story. Her husband, they were married in the temple. They made those covenants. He left those covenants, left the church, left her, there's all kinds of awful things. And I'm like, ooh, maybe death isn't the worst case scenario, which is, hard to say. But this poor sweet woman, she's really struggled with her faith, her own testimony, her self-worth just went through the floor when her husband left, and she, kind of lost her identity. And she's been meeting with the stake president, and she shared this with me. And she said that she was telling the stake president kind of, this is hard. This is awful. This is difficult. This is really overwhelming. And he kind of just lovingly smiled and said, you're in good company. And it wasn't like that slap in the face, but it was that, yeah, it's hard for Jesus. It's been hard for prophets, and we'll see that. So Eleanor Roosevelt's one of my historical figures that I really admire. And she just said, you must do the thing you think you cannot do. And I think that's mortality. Maybe that was our theme. Maybe I should put that on my title of liberty. I think that's widowhood. I think it's certainly parenthood, right? We've got, and we're going, because we know we've got to do it, we might as well figure out some ways to do it. And I saw another quote recently that I loved, and it said, there's no perfect way to be a mom, speaking specifically to moms, but there's a million good ways to be a mom. Like, so stop trying to be that perfect parent, because honestly, that doesn't really exist here. And let yourself just be good at what you're doing. And that can be enough, and let the Savior help you fill in those gaps. So if you were to take a giant piece of paper in this building today and write down a list of all the terrible, awful trials everyone in this building has been through, you'd probably leave feeling like you've been punched in the stomach. Even just this room, and there's like 20 of us, right? And sometimes we make those lists in our head. And it's almost like we're negotiating with the Lord, like, I've already done this, and I survived this, and I stayed faithful through this, and you want me to do this, and there's another, and pretty soon we are just weighing ourselves down with that laundry list of life. You ever done that? Like, you can be guilty in this room. Or on the flip side, have you ever said you wish you had the crystal ball? And you just wish you knew the end, and you knew where it would go, and you knew what it would look like, and if only I knew. And sometimes we just want to know, right? We want to see it. Okay, I'm going to flip both of these upside down for you for a minute and invite you to let yourself think of it a different way. What if this list of difficulty, despair, even death, what if instead of being that heavy laundry list that weighs you down, what if it became your resume? I've survived loss by suicide. My dad killed himself when I was 10. My parents were in the process of getting a divorce. Our finances were through the floor. Everything was a train wreck. I've got 2 brothers in their 40s who are still addicts. I've lost a younger brother-in-law to suicide. We could each go through and make a list. Oh, and then my husband died and I have 7 kids. We could all make a list. And we could get to some of those smaller things that almost seem insignificant, but in the moment they were hard. Like during one of my husband's deployments, our house flooded. That was really hard. Now I look back, I'm like, that was hard. Yeah, it was hard. We had to fight with the insurance. We had to move out and find temporary housing and the new baby. And so you can go through, what if your list of awful became awesome to you? Look what God has helped you get through so far. Yeah.
I would never trade what I had to go through. Just because it brought me so many blessings and miracles. And I would do it all over again. Because
Yeah, having a good say there's been that growth. So let's learn to look at that laundry list. I call it the laundry list. Turn your laundry list into a resume. Because unfortunately, next time you meet someone with a heavy laundry list, you might have a great resume to be qualified to help them. And that beautiful connection here together. Now back to this crystal ball concept. Do you really want a crystal ball? Like we buried my dad at age 10, my age. He was 36. Did I really want a crystal ball to look into the future to tell me that at 39, I'd bury my husband? Like, did I need to know that for decades?
No.
Maybe not, yeah.
I think I had people when I'd find out, or someone was just newly widowed, I'd give the advice, get a calendar and mark it off. And people, the first year, mark off day by day, and people will go, why are you counting down the days? And I would write down 1 month, 2 months, those landmarks
Sure.
on there. Anniversaries, birthdays. And I said, I'm not counting down. I'm counting up.
Yeah.
That's how
I'm
many,
that much
that's how
closer.
many, that's how many days
Yeah.
how many battles I've won. And in that first year, it was just by having that calendar there, when you're sitting there 6 months down the road and having an awful day and marking down the calendar until you look and go, oh, yeah, that was 6 months ago that happened. That explains why this week feels awful.
I've made it. And sometimes you don't even need a calendar to remember those milestones. I don't know about you, but I think my body just knows. My
Oh, your
soul
body
knows.
does.
My soul knows when those dates come. But let's learn, let's let today be enough. And let's let the gospel perspective help us take that crystal ball and maybe look backwards and see our past with more clarity and peace, even the awful things. And I think that's what the atonement of Jesus Christ offers us. It offers us a clearer view where we can still be optimistic about the future, and we can maybe find some peace with the past. We can get to the point where we can say, oh my gosh, this has made me who I am. I've learned, I've grown. The blessing list is far longer than the trial list, but that doesn't take away from the difficulty of that laundry list, right? So how do we do it? That's the real question, right? We could talk doctrine all day about how we're promised blessings and we're promised happiness, and we know life goes on, and there's great truths that we know that keep us on our feet each day. And I could write books and books about the why of the gospel, the why of hope, the why of happiness. The real question is how. I really don't ask why my husband had to die. I ask myself every day, how in the world am I going to do this? How am I going to raise these kids? How am I going to get out of bed? How am I going to get the dishes done again? When I swear to you, I just did them. And the laundry's never done. So I want to share a couple of things I've learned, and hopefully it'll be kind of some topic conversation for discussion. If you're a little bit more introverted and don't want to share out loud, then maybe write a few things down or just think how you might answer these. But there's 5 things that I feel like God has really taught me in these past almost 5 years of, do you feel like you're getting a PhD in survivalhood, right? Like this is not kindergarten level stuff, people. The first is learn how to fall, face what you can't fix, make peace when possible, trust the whole puzzle, and then unlock the magic event. And we'll go through each of these and discuss, and you can take a picture or what, but let's look at the first one. This is my oldest child. She's a circus star. She loves to climb these aerial silks, and of course you watch and you're like, don't fall, don't fall. How many of you have told your child in whatever sport or on the playground or just going in up the stairs, don't fall, don't fall. We say it all day long. I think we would probably do better if we taught our children and ourselves how to fall. Because guess what? You're going to fall, right? So last year over Christmas break, my brother and my sister and I, we took all the kids down to Las Vegas and we saw one of the Cirque du Soleil shows. And I'm watching this like death-defying trapeze artist show going, oh my gosh, they're all gonna die. Everyone's gonna die. Stop this. This is terrible. And then I realized they didn't. And they didn't seem afraid and they had great confidence and great strength. And the teacher in me started asking, like, how do you teach that? Like, forget how do you do that? Because I'm never gonna do that. But how would you teach someone to do that? And you know what? The first lesson I bet they have to learn is how to fall. Trust your safety net. Trust that you're gonna be okay if you fall. And as you go through these, we'll do these two really fast and then talk for a minute. Face the things you can't fix. Trust that there's going to be things out of your control. I think in the widow world, everybody wants to fix it, right? All the loving people right after your spouse died that called, how can I help? What do you need? Let me know. And maybe they bring 4 pans of lasagna a night. And genuine people asking, how can I help? And if you're anything like me, how do you answer that question? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let's stop trying to fix every little thing and focus instead on how we can face some of these things. So my husband was deployed at the time he died. And so kind of like you in the back, Bryn, we'd been used to him being gone, I thought. Like, he's gone all the time. Like, I can take out the garbage. I can put the kids to bed. I've been doing it for years in our married military life. And, but the year of this last deployment was off the charts. That's when the house flooded. I had the new baby. I had 7 kids. I had our first teenager. I had 2 grumpy sons. Like, everything went wrong that could have. And my husband and I didn't get a chance to talk very often over the phone because of the time difference and just he was busy when we couldn't match up. He'd like always call at bedtime. Why did dads always call at bedtime? Dads don't call at bedtime. It's a horrible time to call because we're trying to put the kids to bed. And by the time I got the kids to bed, he no longer had free time. But in the middle of October, days before my husband was killed, we connected on the phone. We had a great actual time to have a conversation. And you know what that conversation went like? Let me tell you everything that's gone wrong. And here I was, the laundry list, the kids this, the house that, the insurance well, and I just went through the whole thing. And bless my sweet husband who'd been married to me long enough to know to just, so sorry, honey. I'm so sorry, honey. Bless him for not trying to fix it because that would have made it way worse if he just tried to fix it. But as I went through and I wasn't meaning to complain and I certainly wasn't meaning to blame him and it wasn't like I was angry. I was just tired. I just reached the breaking point. Like, you've got to get home and help me. I cannot do this. Like, it's not that I'm done because I'm not willing. I'm just beyond my capacity. And he asked me a question, and it's going to come back to what you first said, both of you ladies at the beginning, really all of us. So I want you to write this question down if you have paper to write. Oh, I can see, they can't see. The little Zoom people can't see our screen. That didn't help. Hold on. Maybe now they can see it a little better. Okay. He asked me one question that really probably changed the course of my life because I did not yet know that he was dead within a couple weeks. Ready for that one question? Oh, hold on. So let's talk for a minute. What are your coping mechanisms? And is this a question you feel like you could just answer comfortably, confidently? Got it. I got an arsenal of them. I will tell you that day when my husband asked me, what are your coping mechanisms? I had nothing. I honestly couldn't think of a single thing. And that's when I realized the reason I say this question really saved me is because it got me to think. It annoyed me, first of all. What are your coping mechanisms? What do you mean? Don't you have a magic wand to just fix things so I don't have to cope anymore? But it startled me because I couldn't answer the question. I didn't even know it's like I didn't know what it meant, coping mechanisms. So let's talk for a minute. Fortunately, because that question annoyed me so much and resonated with me, I spent some time in the next coming days really trying to think about it and forcing myself to come up with something. And then I started to make a list in my journal, and Funny thing is, once you identify one, you can identify more, but those first few are hard. So I want to share a couple steps that we can take, and this is where I want to spend some time talking for a minute. So what are your coping mechanisms? If you have any. I found a couple that work for me. For me, sometimes I need to look at pictures I've taken. How many of you have a million pictures on your phone or your iPad or whatever? You ever found like the psychology of scrolling back through photos? Maybe it's when your spouse was still here. Maybe it's that time your son buttered the floor with peanut butter in the kitchen. Maybe it's whatever those memories were to stir your soul, that it hasn't always been as dark as it might be in the dark moment. Yeah.
You know, when I got home and everybody had left, the first thing that I did was call the oxygen company to come get his oxygen. Because I just couldn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And I didn't sleep in my bed for 3 or 4 months. I slept in the recliner because I couldn't sleep in that bed. And I'm so grateful that I had my family. My girls were all married, and they came and stayed with me a couple of nights for the first week.
Yeah.
And there were other things down the line that I just had to do that. I couldn't handle having that there anymore.
Yeah, that physical reminder. Thank you for that.
Is that naughty?
No, no, I,
Is that a bad thing to do?
no,
Because I-
not at all.
I
We,
couldn't do it.
a couple months after my husband died, I had some girlfriends come over to help me pack his things up. And the night before they were coming, I called the one that's the closest friend and I told her I won't be here when you come. I can't do it. And I had them pack it, they labeled it, and it's still in my shed. It's been 5 years. Haven't touched it. Can't. No, I don't think there's any timelines. I think we all agree, right? There's no timelines. No matter what your mother-in-law says, no matter what the book on grieving says. Okay, go ahead. Coping mechanisms.
I think about COVID, and the first 3 weeks, he looked like he was getting better. Then it became a septic staph infection, and he was intubated and put on ECMO to try to save him. And so I remember that day, it was April 24th, and the doctors were coming out constantly. Like, I was in the emergency room at the IMC bigger hospital that had been life flighted. And they were coming out constantly asking me for like life and death decisions, like, do we do this or not? Do we do that or not? And I remember this one doctor came out and said, sit down. And I'm like, I cannot sit. I said, all I could do is pace back and forth. I said, I will stand, but I won't sit. And that became my coping mechanism over the next 4 months, where he was still in the hospital trying to get better.
Fighting for his life.
And it's become my coping mechanism for like a year now. So like exercise to me became an outlet for the anxiety.
Yeah.
I just couldn't sit. Whenever people would be like, you just need to rest. I don't want to rest. I just
Right.
want to run.
Right.
And I would pound the ground with my feet, or, I would just, that's how I got out anger. That's how I got out anxiety. And it's been a good thing for me, but
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for showing that. I love that physical. There is a physiology to the adrenaline that comes with anxiety and things, and needing to kind of sweat it out, stamp it out with that movement. I'm with you. I don't sit so well either. And people mean well when they say you just need to rest. And maybe there's a time you just need to rest, but it's okay if people don't know what you need. It's okay to say thank you for that input, and you have to fight with them, but thank you. Thanks for the suggestion. And then go to what works. Who else has some coping mechanisms?
Find the things that make you laugh.
For example, give me a
For
couple. Like,
example,
I want
will tell
actual
you, the
real
day I
things.
came,
I don't
so
want
the day I
theory.
came home, my husband was in a car accident, going to my brother's out renewal. He was coming up to reception, hurricane-like weather in Washington, and everyone slipped their nose. They told you don't drive, but we were stupid. We had this going on, we did it anyways. My sister found the hospital, found him in the hospital, and like, she hands me the phone. Here's the neurosurgeon, and he died. I pulled the plug. That was Saturday night. Monday morning around 4 a.m. I pulled the plug. Well, my brother's an MP. And my brother and his best friend had gone up to, they had left his phone in the car. So I knew exactly where the car was. So I sent his best friend to go get his wallet and his phone for me. And he did that. And my sister and my brother go and grab some stuff. And so you would understand how strong these MPs are. They take out the worst stuff in the world. My husband was the clown at the haunted house. And my brother didn't realize how much I needed him. But that day he held me. And then I got home. He held me till I fell asleep. And I'm probably like most of us at this point, they're giving us sleeping pills, so we'll sleep. So you'll sleep because especially where I needed in the ICU, I needed to sleep and at least get me to shut my eyes for a couple hours.
Sure.
And have some rest. And so I had taken this sleeping pill and I get jolted up by some noise. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I went back to sleep. Well, I finally woke up and my mom told me what had happened. Well, they pulled, because it'd been wet and rainy, they had taken everything from the car that they brought out and put it in the bathroom. My brother's used to pulling out this weird thing, that weird thing. Who knows what a soldier's got in their bag? And the next thing that he hears, he pulls out my husband's mask, clown mask. Ah! Jason! And that it was, had woke me. And as weird as it was, my mom, like, we still go back and laugh. Jason got the last laugh on my brother. He got the last laugh on the MP.
Yeah, that's sweet. Thank you for that. How many of you found some type of relief in laughter? How many of you have ever felt guilty sometimes when you laugh? I think that's some things that as widows and widowers, sometimes life is beautiful even after loss. And sometimes that can be difficult to let yourself laugh, to let yourself have those beautiful moments. It doesn't take away from the loss, they can coexist. Yeah, please.
So just on that, like, I have young kids, and my son was gone when my youngest was 2. So like now, like my kids are transitioning into like these like fun toddler, young kid life, and I sometimes feel guilty, like enjoying life with them because I'm like, he would have loved this, like, he would have loved playing with my kids.
And that's hard to, I had a similar thought where instead of being so sad and overwhelmed by the fact that I'm raising my kids without my husband, it made me sad that he doesn't get to raise them. And that's where we'll get to that in a minute, but learning to kind of trust that core, let yourself live in the beauty of that moment and let yourself be free of that guilt. I don't think grief has any room for guilt. Grief's exhausting enough. It's physically demanding. And there's not that need to kind of carry that with us, but that's difficult. Did you have a?
Yeah, just say
Yeah.
sometimes there's the positive and there's the negative coping mechanisms,
Sure.
and it's easy to fall into negative ones. We have fun motorcycle riding, snowmobiling, ATV. I have an 11-year-older. I've got a 21-year-older who's every gray hair I have is from him. He came from a drug family, adopted him. He's still trying to self-destruct.
Okay.
We had bouncers at the funeral. He only showed up the part of the funeral. I mean, it's on and on and on.
Yeah.
He's been at homeless shelters, and so that I've had that coping. That's another loss,
Sure.
and it's tough, and so I have to keep an emotional distance. So that's how I have to learn, with a difficult family member to be able to distance myself. Can't be at the home because of drugs, things like that. He actually lives in Utah. I live in Idaho.
Okay.
But there's times when you just want to like having to do this when I get home. I got little checklists, and you get home, you're like, okay, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna lay down in bed and watch TV, I'm gonna get on my phone. So there's those negative ones.
Where you're kind of just numbing out.
You just dumb me out.
Yeah.
And there's the other ones, I'm good, get up in the morning, I work for myself. So get up, get moving, have my checklist. I have an 11-year-old. He's easy. We have a lot of fun. But I also worry that I gotta make sure I'm not checking out, go on vacations, do things like that. But it's so easy to just float along because it just hurts. And yeah, it is a mix. I'm just saying it's a hard struggle. I think a lot of you probably understand that, but it's a weird mix. So
And that difficulty, I appreciate what you mentioned about boundaries with a family member. And one thing I know that's hard for me as a mom, and I think for all of us as parents, we can't take our kids' grief away as much as we wish we could. And as a military family, I remember really struggling with that right after my husband died. I felt immense guilt, almost guilty that my husband had died because I had supported his military service so much. And maybe his parents wish I would have said, no, don't go, or no, don't do that. And I kind of, you bring it on yourself for whatever reason we do. It's human nature. And I was in the temple shortly after my husband died when I just kind of had these thoughts like, my poor kids, they were just born into this mess. They didn't choose military. They didn't choose this life path that we had taken. We fasted, we prayed, we made decisions conscientiously. We, I guess, took that risk. I just started thinking, yeah, but my kids didn't. They were born into this mess. And I felt really bad and really just kind of self-guilt about that. Until all of a sudden, I feel like the spirit right there in the temple reminded me, my kids were born into the covenant. They were born into this. And I think sometimes we've got to trust that if we can learn and grow from our trials, then we've got to give our kids space to do that too. And as much as we want to fix it for them, and I want to fix it because I don't want you to have to feel that, we've got to help them find the Savior and find that hope. And maybe they won't find him right away. Like I said, my brothers have been lost on and off since our dad died, and it's been 30-something years. Fortunately, we've gotten to the point now where we have a good family relationship, but there's still some really tough choices and addictive behaviors and things that make it difficult. To where, again, I keep coming to this, trust your core, women's intuition, the spirit, your gut, whatever you call it. If you have an idea or a prompting or something for your family, for your home, for yourself, don't dismiss it. Don't second guess it. Don't sit and hem and haw, was that me or the spirit? Was that me or the spirit? Because I think we do that a lot. Write this down if you want to look at a great talk about that. Elder Bednar gave a talk to missionaries at the MTC, and he just asked it, how do I know if is it me or the Holy Ghost? Have you heard it?
Mhm.
And what does he say?
Doesn't matter.
Quit worrying about it. Doesn't matter. Yeah, quit worrying about it. If you go to YouTube and you just do Elder Bednar, quit worrying about it. He just says, quit worrying about it. Try your best. Take one step at a time. Put a foot in front of the other. Trust your ability to still be the parent. Whether you're the mom or the dad, you still have that covenant with the Savior. You still have that parental instinct and those rights. Now, your kids might disagree with you. That's okay. Don't base your parenting strategy on how much they like it.
I was gonna say that the kids have a different grieving process because they had a different relationship with them as well.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes they don't understand how I'm feeling. They said, oh, it's okay, Mom, it's just like, I don't want them to go through what I went through, but they're just grieving from a different perspective.
Right. And we all are from a different perspective. Yeah, Lisa.
Okay, don't worry about it. I think I should share something. With kids, little ones especially, at every developmental stage, they have to grieve all over again because the way they see the world and what they understand about the world has now expanded. And I want to say it's the third round, and my kids were just really angry, cranky, angry. And I had impression, instinct, whatever, that we needed to talk about what we're grateful for. And I needed to teach them how to recognize Heavenly Father's hand in their life every day. So we take turns every day. One day it's my turn to say all the prayers. Next day it's my son, etc. So in the morning prayer, we all say one thing we're grateful for. Sometimes it's hard. And my daughter, she's having a really bad day when she's grateful for herself. That's all she can think of, right?
Yeah.
And then the person saying the prayer thanks Heavenly Father for each of those things. Then in our night prayer, we talk about one way you saw Heavenly Father in your day. Sometimes it's, I had a really good day at school. Or sometimes I got an answer to this prayer, more specific. And in the beginning, it was hard for them to think of stuff. But as they've gotten more used to it and we repeat it back as the one person who says the prayer, it's become much more easier. And I have to tell you, it's probably been 4 months since either one of them have been grounded. And they're only 11 and 12 because it's easier. We've been doing this for about 3 years now. And it has made a 90% difference in how they face their difficulties.
I love that. That's beautiful. Help your children recognize the gratitude, the blessing.
The Heavenly Father is
that
involved
he's-
in their life
Yes.
every day.
Because otherwise it's so easy to wonder where he is or to turn their backs on him, or we wonder the same. I put that with the grace. Gratitude softens grief. And I love that you said young children go through different stages. I would say old children go through different stages too. Like I lost my dad 30 years ago and I reach different milestones when I recognize he's not here.
Milestone.
He's still not here, just for the record, he's still not here. You've never outgrown that. He's still not here.
Each
And so-
milestone almost starts the grief process over again in us and in the kids. When you hit that 16-year-old driving, and it wasn't mom's job to teach him to drive, it was dad's.
Yeah.
You hit that high school graduation and you see the shirt, I'm not crying, you are, and you just sit there and laugh because you're gonna cry at graduations. You're gonna cry at weddings.
I had a friend when my daughter just got accepted to college and I was so excited for her. And I will admit guilty. My first thought was, Brent's not here to see this. And I had another widow friend that reminded me, this is Megan's moment to have this celebration, this happiness. She's well aware that her father's not here to see this. I don't need to be weighed down and take away from that and let her have that grace and give ourselves grace. And really, even when our kids do stupid things, like we've got to remember, do you really believe it? Do you believe the atonement is infinite? Do you believe there's room for that grace? Do you believe God can love us through all of the difficulty and the hard and even the stupidity? And I think the answer is yes, he can.
I was just wanted to say I really like the proactive approach. Like I have a widower friend who has young kids too, and Mother's Day always comes up in the school year. That's like never gonna go away.
Yeah.
And what he does with his kids is that he asks them, like, how do you want to handle this school year? Like, do you want me to talk to your teacher about it, before the day comes? So they get to choose. Like, or not, whatever.
I wish we had like 5 hours to talk about how do you handle milestones and holidays with your
Right.
kids. Maybe at lunch we can sit down and exchange ideas but I think she's really hit on probably we could spend hours going through details, but let it be in their court. Let them grieve the way they grieve. If they don't understand your grief, realize you probably don't fully understand their grief, and that's okay. And I'm going to skip through a couple of these and then we can come back. One of these that I talk about a lot is we've got to start thinking and. I think we live in a world that wants us to have to choose between right and wrong, good and evil. Those are true things, black and white. But because of that, I think Satan then twists those truths and makes us feel like we have to choose between happy and heartbroken, taking care of others and giving time for myself. And so I think probably the number one lesson widowhood has really taught me is that in the infinite atonement of Jesus Christ, there's room for every and. Like I can be worried sick about my kids and try really hard to trust that the Savior is going to take them on the path they need to be on. And that path might not look like I want it to look. And I can still love them. And I can set boundaries if needed to say I can't enable that behavior. But do you see where that goes? I can hate Mother's Day anniversaries all the days and recognize that it's still on the calendar. I'm going to change it. So maybe that conversation up front. Another thing we could talk about is how do you keep that relationship with your children and that in-law side of the family, the aunts and uncles or the grandparents from your deceased spouse. And I think sometimes we can really work through this and better. Another thing I want you to think about, I wish we could be here for hours. I've learned we have to trust the whole puzzle. When you're building a puzzle and there's like that ugly brown piece, like I don't want that ugly brown piece. You want that ugly brown piece? Just want to throw it away, it doesn't fit. Sometimes you're building a really intricate puzzle and the pieces, you're sure this one doesn't belong in the box. And I think that's how we are with circumstances in our lives sometimes. Like, whoa, no, wrong piece, wrong circumstance, wrong puzzle. No, this is his, this is hers, this is someone else's. And then maybe later, that beautiful ugly brown piece is part of something. And I think that's what the plan of salvation gives us hope that we can really make it work. Take a piece that doesn't fit, that's ugly, that you hate, that you don't like. And it's possible to have faith and questions. It's possible to trust and wonder and give yourself that space. This is the last thing I'll leave with us to think about just because time is short. I would just encourage all of us to make peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, right? Peace with yourself. Again, peace with your past, peace with the beautiful future, peace in the moment of enjoying your children at whatever stage they're in, peace in letting go of that burden that you have to fix everything for your child or for the world, because it's just in our nature to caregive. Peace in maybe asking for help when it's just too hard. But these are 3 things that have really helped me focus on those relationships, find a way to communicate. And then really, if you find you're really struggling with a child or anyone, whatever client, coworker, a spouse, but in this case, if you're struggling with a child, find ways to serve him or her, even that pain in the butt teenager. I have a teenage son. We've really struggled these past few years. We're just very different personality. Obviously, we're both dealing with our own grief and things. And life got crazy those first couple years after my husband was gone, and I didn't cook as much. I don't know about you. It's like I forgot how to cook. I used to make dinner every dang day. And so that, right, it was DoorDash. Yeah, we're good friends. But one little thing that's really made a huge difference, I started making my 16-year-old son breakfast every morning, like I used to when he was little. Now, he's fully capable of making himself some eggs or pancakes or getting that bowl of cereal. And I'm not necessarily trying to enable him, but it was just one idea that came to me as a little idea that where very quietly in the morning, I can make him some breakfast and say, here's your breakfast. And it's me serving him. It's me giving him space. It's me quietly acknowledging that I'm still his mom, even though he's 16, other than one mom, But for us, that communication isn't very verbal. He's not a verbal person. So for me, communication is let's have a heart to heart because I'm a verbal person. But find ways to communicate. Let the Spirit guide you to connect with those kids and build those relationships. And then when everything feels like it's going wrong, just step back. And remember the atonement is infinite, and that can be enough. So many more things we could talk about and ideas to share. This is just the kind of back to that labyrinth idea that, once upon a time, Brett and I were sure we were going to live happily ever after. And we made all the choices based on the Spirit and got to where we were, and it ended very differently than I thought. But it didn't really end. And I can move forward without moving on, and I can take him with me wherever we are. He's a part of me, he's a part of my children, he's made me who I am today. And to be able to live in the end that I believe is the greatest gift Jesus Christ offers us. And I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Maybe we can all sit together at lunch and talk